Poltergeists are usually associated with an individual. Hauntings seem to be connected with an area. A house, usually.
Poltergeist disturbances are of fairly short duration, perhaps a couple of months. Hauntings can go on for years.
Broadcasting live from the dark and cold dungeons deep beneath the KLAV studios in Las Vegas, Nevada. Prepare yourselves to be taken away into another dimension as we now have control over your thoughts, fears, and perspective of the unexplained world you dare not speak of. With your hosts, Lindsay Knight and Michael Knight. Ladies and gentlemen, we now open the gates to the paranormal and beyond.
Broadcasting live from the KLAV studios in Las Vegas, Nevada, this is the Paranormal and Beyond. Have you ever came home from work one day to relax when out of nowhere, that morbid question of who might have died in your house runs across your mind? Amongst the murders, suicide, and accidents alone, it is said that 65% of the homes in America today have some kind of death-related history etched within its walls. In a moment, Roy Condrey, founder of the controversial website which is now gaining popular notoriety all across the world, diedinhouse.com, will be joining us on the program to discuss his company, which searches millions of records to determine if a death has occurred in a home. Straight ahead, Roy Condrey and diedinhouse.com when we return right here on the Talk of Las Vegas, KLAV 1230 AM.
Your ticket to the unknown is at KnightsParanormalResearchSociety.com. UFOs, ghosts, aliens, hauntings, mysterious places, and more can be found at KnightsParanormalResearchSociety.com. Knights with a K, ParanormalResearchSociety.com. Based out of Las Vegas, Nevada, Knights Paranormal Research Society is owned and operated by the renowned brother and sister team of Michael and Lindsay Knight. Seeing is believing. And at KnightsParanormalResearchSociety.com, you're going to believe. Join us every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 11 p.m. to midnight for the Paranormal and Beyond. Join host Michael Knight and Lindsay Knight as they investigate the unexplained and most controversial mysteries of the world. The Paranormal and Beyond, where the paranormal lives on and conspiracies exposed. The Paranormal and Beyond, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 11 p.m. to midnight. Brought to you by KnightsParanormalResearchSociety.com. This is the Paranormal and Beyond, and it's your show. Call us at 731-1230. Here again, Michael Knight and Lindsay Knight.
Welcome back to another brand new edition of the Paranormal and Beyond. But first, be sure to check us out at KnightsParanormalResearchSociety.com, where you can link up to all the past shows by simply clicking on that archive link above. That's KnightsParanormalResearchSociety.com. Ever want to be an actor? Well, start acting by logging on to HollywoodBoundActingAcademy.com. Again, that's HollywoodBoundActingAcademy.com. Special shout out to all those driving around in the Vegas Valley and all those listening to us through the KLAV1230AM.com website. Thank you very much for listening to us and all our stories. I'm your host, Michael Knight. Alongside of me is your other host, Lindsay Knight, the Princess of Darkness of the Airwaves. How are you doing, Lindsay?
I am doing well as always. How are you, Michael?
I am great. A lot of wind out there today, and I'm surprised I did not fly away and end up in Oz. But other than that, I am great. I'm ready to do the show. Coming up pretty soon, we have Roy Condrey, who's going to be talking about his website, deadinhouse.com. We did a piece on this, and it's great to have him on the program. But you know what time it is? It's time to get into the news.
Topping the news for the paranormal and beyond, I am your host, Lindsay Knight, giving you all the strange happenings and going on and bizarre things going on around the world. The Museum of Icelandic Society and Witchcraft in Iceland is getting a whole lot of attention lately. Hanging on the wall is a pair of replica pants made from human skin, which is so grotesque they could make even Hannibal Lecter reach for the barf bag. The 17th century human trousers called necro pants were made by skinning the legs of a dead man from the waist down and include all the bits and pieces in between, yes, even the genitals. Worn by the 17th century sorcerers who believed the bizarre slacks possessed magical powers and would bring them wealth and luck by placing a coin in the scrotum of the human khakis. The wearer would have an endless flow of money. Want a pair of necro pants to call your own? The museum includes a do-it-yourself guide on how to make your own. Of course, you have to get permission from a living human to use the skin after he's dead. Moving on. Ever wanted to be woken up in the morning to the smell of bacon or coffee or maybe even strawberries? Well, now people can live vicariously through their cell phones. New smartphones notifications smell like the most perfect food. A new smartphone plug-in accessory can release a puff of bacon or other smell into the air. Should you choose to live deliciously, there is also a timer that releases the scent at any time you choose. The technology attaches to a headphone socket on both iPhones and Android smartphones. Reporting the news for the paranormal and beyond, I am Lindsay.
All right, those pants, I guess you can't say one size fits all when it comes to necro pants. And by the way, I got to add, if we are not already living in a totalitarian government, Congress passes a law today. Now they're going to start charging you for mileage and putting a black box in your car. So think about that. If we are not under control as it is already, this is absurd. And I would like to see the feedback from not our government, but from the people who actually run our country, and that is the Illuminati and those secret powers who control the oil and wealth of America. They're not going to be too happy with this. So good luck with that, Obama and all you minions in office over there. All right, let's get to our top story. Our special guest, Roy Condrey, has a Bachelor's of Science degree out of Limestone College and an MBA from Webster University. As a software development project manager by trade and also as a communications officer in the South Carolina Air National Guard, Roy, along with his business partner Ronnie Hooker, founded the company Simply Put Solutions, Inc., which is the creators of deadinhouse.com. Roy got the idea for the website after a tenant in one of his rental properties told him that it was haunted. Today, there are only 3 states, California, Alaska, and South Dakota, with strict laws regarding death disclosure in real estate transactions. As deadinhouse.com gains worldwide acceptance and popularity, realtors from all over the world are not taking it too kindly and finding it as a threat to their business. The Paranormal and Beyond would like to welcome to the program Roy Condrey. Yes, how you doing, Roy?
I'm doing well. Good morning, Michael and Lindsay from the East Coast over here.
Hi, how are you?
Roy, how's the weather out there? Is it windy?
The weather's changing, so it's a little chilly.
Yeah, it's windy here and very, very cold.
You know, I just have to tell you, Roy, last week, it's funny because I do the news segment, and I saw your piece, and I thought it was so fascinating. I had to use it, and it's so funny that you're on the air because, I mean, I just love what you did. It's amazing, you know, because you just don't see this. You really don't.
Right. Well, thank you very much.
Roy, let's get into how this all came about. I understand you are a software development. You're very savvy when it comes to computers and stuff like that. From reading the intro, this came about by a paranormal situation, in a sense.
Yeah, it sure did. So I have a few rental properties, on the side that I manage, and just has long-term investments. And I usually go through a property management company. And so an air conditioning went out in one of the units, and I gave the lady there my phone number so we can work directly. 'Cause, it's just too much of a hassle when your air is out already in the middle of summer. This was about a year ago. But either way, she still had my number. I guess, I'm not real casual this lady. I didn't know her really at all. It was about 9 o'clock at night, and I was laying there getting ready to go to bed and go to work the next day, and I got a text from her, and it said, "Did you know your house is haunted?" That's unusual. You don't get that text from anybody. So I texted her back immediately, and I said, "Tell me more. What's going on?" And as I was sitting there waiting, I just started thinking, I don't know the history of these homes at all. I don't know if anyone ever died in these properties. So she never got back to me, believe it or not. So the next day, the first place you go to find something like that is online, right? So I started searching, and I didn't find one place to go. Like you can go get a Carfax before you buy a car, or background checks before you hire a nanny or what have you, or an employee. So I started doing my research, and all I found online was a bunch of advice. And all the advice says was, speak with your neighbors and check government records and, check online and, ask your agent and all those things. Those sound simple, but that's easier said than done.
Yeah, time consuming for one.
Exactly. I mean, I challenge anyone to go out there, get online, and try to find the history of your home. And then if you can't find it online, which is sometimes, near to impossible, you head on down to your local library or your town archives, what have you. There's not one book there you're going to find to say, here's everyone that's died in your home. So it's going to be tons of research, because you have to find everyone that's lived at that property, not just the owner. The owner is the easiest one to find. And then you have to find, you're looking for the roommate that was in there at one point, and maybe an aunt that lived there, a grandmother. And then you got to find out if they're deceased, and then you got to find out if there's a record of them dying in that home. So I found out it's very time-consuming. And then during the research, I found out no one's died in that property that she mentioned, but some people died in another property. And I was like, wow, I felt like that should have been disclosed to me. I said, isn't that, telling myself, isn't that a disclosure law? So again, I go back to the internet, start doing research on the property disclosure laws, and I find out that it's not. And actually, the law it states it's not considered a material fact. And so, you look up this jargon. I'm not that smart to understand it. So I look up what material fact is, and it says anything that can impact the buyer's decision. But what the law and what real estate considers material fact are things like water leaks and aged roofs. And those are important. I want to know those. I'm about to make a large investment on a home. But, those things you can fix and remove totally. You can never remove the stigma of, a death occurrence in a home. You can't remove the fact that Andrea Yates didn't drown her 5 children in her home, or John Wayne Gacy, buried 26 young men in his crawl space. And I think that's information that people need to know, because it does impact people's decisions.
About 5 months ago, I was reading on the news, because I'm, always checking out the news, and there was a lady who moved from, I guess she was getting a divorce, and she left her husband, and she took all her savings, and she bought a house, I believe, in Pennsylvania, or she bought a house in California, and she spent about $600,000 and put, I think, $200,000 into the property, and they lived there for about less than a year. And what happened was her child was going to school, and he came home and he was crying, and I guess there had been stories, and the neighbors were talking about it, but nobody had informed this family, which is the wife and the 3 kids, that 3 people had been murdered in that home. And nobody informed them when they were purchasing this home that had happened. And, the kids were like terrified, and she was saying now they're trying to move out, but they don't have any money to do so, and she's trying to sue the state for not even informing them that people were murdered in that home, or people had died in that house to begin with. And now she's living, her kids are traumatized.
Right. I mean, that's another thing I found out, is all of the stories out there of this that same occurrence happening. I mean, there is a home up in Silver Springs, Maryland, where a father heard some ruckus upstairs. So he ran upstairs, and it was just him and his daughter that lived in the house. And there was an intruder, attacking his daughter. Well, the intruder ended up murdering the daughter and the father. After that occurred, the address was changed, and the house, of course, the value depreciated. And they ended up selling it 2 years later to a guy named Brian Betts, and he was a middle school principal. Well, he moved in and closed and then found out about the murders. He couldn't get out of the deal, same deal like you're mentioning. He's trying to get it reversed. Couldn't get out legally, so he ended up going to his church and asking them to bless the home, which they did. But 6 years later, he was murdered in that home. So, I don't know if there's some kind of karma there or just circumstance or what have you, but I'm sure, just like me, I would have done this. I would have had a different decision if I would have known about the murder-suicide. But I'm sure, the guy obviously sounded like he didn't want to live there. And
well, absolutely, because like we were just talking, people save a lot of money to buy their dream home and, start a new family. I mean, with a clean slate. And I feel that realtors should be honest, but they're becoming like sharks. And you've been getting a lot of negative feedback from realtors per se, right?
I'm not getting attacks. I mean, I've been on a couple of realtor shows, and they're, they're not used to thinking this way. And there's a lot of good realtors, but this is what I tell them. I say, I'm in the Air National Guard, and I've been in 21 years, and it's probably one of the best decisions I ever made in my life. And I love our military, but people are people, and no matter how much we like to say it, not everybody in the military has integrity. And that goes for doctors, and that goes for realtors. Everyone that is under an oath. Just because we're under an oath doesn't mean that we're automatically, ethical people. So you can't trust every realtor, especially when there are stories like we were just mentioning. I mean, you're talking about, that's a dream home that people, it's the largest, most emotional investment of their life. Give them everything that you have. Let them make the decision. There's a story up in Michigan where this the older couple, they were looking for a new home, their dream home. They finally could afford this, and they saw, and the house was getting built, and there was a basement and some framework, what have you, and they said, okay, yeah, that basement is where our grandchildren can spend a night, and blah, blah, blah. Well, they ended up, having that house finished, closing on it. They're excited about it. They live in it for a couple of years and find out that the original builder hung himself down in that basement, that same basement. Everyone, the bank and everyone that was a part of it knew of the story, but no one felt to disclose that information to them. Now they're in the home, their dream home, which they loved because they built, but now it has that stigma, so they're not sure how they really feel about this. And, it's just not fair.
Let me ask you this. Is it up, I know in different states, it's, different stipulations on how they do things, whether they tell you or not, or if it's, if they can disclose it or not. But is it really up to the individual who's purchasing the home, to take it upon themselves to find out the history? Or, I know it's, it's a two-sided coin on that aspect, but why do you think it's not disclosed that, hey, somebody was killed in this home, or, there was something, there was some kind of tragedy that happened in this home? Why don't you think they stipulate that? Or do they lie to these people at certain times and say, hey, nothing's happened in this home. This house is ready to go, perfect condition, nothing's ever happened. Has that ever occurred?
Well, and this is all presumption. Our presumption is why it's not part of the industry is because it makes it harder to sell. And it also depreciates the value, especially of violent crime. But also, I think that talking paranormal has not been a regular thing to talk about. You're basically labeled crazy or what have you if you spoke about ghosts, and it still goes that way. Even with the big push in the paranormal community the last few years, I think that depending on, people have trained. It takes time to change a culture, but I think so. I tell people, it's not just paranormal, and but there is an AP poll back in 2007 that stated 1/3 of Americans admit to believing in ghosts, and I put that on my Facebook site. But what I posted with it is how many didn't admit to believing in ghosts. 1/3 of America, that's over 100 million people right there. So how many didn't admit to it? But this thing impacts people that believe in the paranormal. Maybe they fear the paranormal, they enjoy it, and they just want to know. But then there's a group of people that may not believe in that, but they just don't want the stigma. They don't want to invest in a property or live in a property that there was a definite. And all of us have a different opinion about this. Some of us, there's cultures out there that don't want to invest with into a property that has any type of death, no matter if it's an accidental or a peaceful death. And I have people that the people that push back the most to make the question are just the individual consumers. And this is brand new to everybody, and it gets people thinking. But some people go, my grandmother died in this property, and my children were born here. Whatever. This isn't a stigmatized property. And I would like to reply to them, but I don't want to upset them anymore. But what I would tell them is, your grandmother's dear to you. I understand. But the next guy moving this house, he may not want any, or girl, they don't want any death associated. They didn't know your grandmother. And what's funny about this is I'm sitting around the other night with my neighbors, and we're talking about this, and some of them had those same feelings. But then they started switching into ghost stories. My grandmother was talking to me. I smelt her. I think one of them said I smelt her, and her scent, what have you. And I'm sitting there watching this, and then I told them, I said, see, that's what I was talking about. You guys are comfortable. You got contact or reach back from your loved one, and it's special to you. But the next guy who's saying he may not want to, it's scary to him or uncomfortable.
He don't want to talk to her grandma.
Right. So this is much why the site came about, because with the laws, as I was looking the 47 states, some have it written into their laws, but it's very light, and it says, if a buyer asks the seller, and the seller knows, they should tell the truth. But then it follows saying, no action can be taken against them for not telling you.
Well, see, you make up a good point when you were talking about the paranormal, because even if it's not paranormal related, it's just the stigma alone. It's sort of like this black cloud hovering off, something that was supposed to be very innocent for the building of your family. And so, I want people out there to realize that this is not all about ghosts. It's just basically the death itself and not being disclosed. And you got to look at it. Realtors today, you have a few that won't even tell you that the plumbing is bad. And I don't know how they're going to even divulge saying that there was a, suicide in this house and go that far if they can't even just, reveal that, hey, it's old plumbing. You got to, people end up buying the house and then find out they're going to have to spend out of pocket way a lot more to rebuild everything under the ground.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, I have another story similar. So there is a woman, her husband died in California, right? So she moves her kids closer up in Pennsylvania. It sounds like a similar story earlier, but it was on ABC News in January. And so she takes her children up closer to her family in Pennsylvania, pays $600,000 for this home. And then she finds out around Halloween, people are gawking and all that stuff, and the neighbors finally confess to this suicide that happened. Imagine your new neighbors just moved in next door. There's a murder-suicide there. And these neighbors moved in, and they're all happy, and you don't really know them just yet. You haven't broken the ice or anything, and you're sitting there going, I wonder if they know. So it's not
I can picture that.
House has been vacant for like 10 years.
Right. You just don't walk up and say, hey, how's it going? I'm Roy, your neighbor. There's a murder-suicide here. You just don't do it. And
don't do that.
So, so that's what happens to that lady. And then, so what happened? She found out, and then she went to try to get out of the deal, and it was too late. And she took him to court. And the investor, what happened was that when the guy that lived there killed his wife and then killed himself, and the children were in the home at the same time, but the children weren't harmed. The house went back on the market, and it depreciated down to $450,000. This couple, they're going and doing property investment. And they bought this place for $450,000. They sold to her a year later for comps for $600,000. They and the agent did not disclose that information to her, and she could not get out of the deal. And Pennsylvania ruled against her, and it's just not fair. That's a big chunk of money for a woman that's already grieving over her husband's death.
Absolutely.
And it's just the pain of going through a deal with that.
So what happens, for these properties? I mean, they just go back and forth, and, they keep depreciating until you have, maybe a paranormal team buy it, but that's not going to happen. But what happens? It sits there until it gets demolished? Because it's just so tainted.
it depends on the crime. But what bothers people the most is how recent is a murder-suicide. Okay, the further it goes back, people get a little more comfortable, There are people that are never comfortable with it. But if you look at the house that Nicole Brown Simpson was murdered at, Ryan Goldman, people think, it's funny. This is a good point on this. Stigmatized properties or something associated with death. So there are a lot of people out there believe that the house that Nicole was murdered at is demolished. No, the house that got demolished is one O.J. lived in. There wasn't a crime done there. I mean, maybe he came back and cleaned up, and that's a crime. But the murder was at where Nicole's place at. That place is still standing. And again, that address changed. But if you look back at the history of the property sales, eventually in time, that your property value starts increasing again. But it's how recent it is; it just drops. And then it depends on how bad it is. Then it's right. People do buy it and they turn around. There's, like the Lizzie Borden bed and breakfast, and there's the Williska axe murderer home. And people profit off of these things.
Yeah.
So it all depends. But what's funny is people, the Amityville home, people live there. That address has changed also. And I was reading, I'm just trying to figure out why these people change these addresses. And a lot of the reason I hear is for privacy. I'm going, are you kidding me? I mean, these are big homes that, very famous homes. And I just don't understand privacy. I mean, there's no running away from this. You can change the address and street name to, Sesame Street Way. It doesn't matter. People are going to know that's the Amityville.
That's the same thing with the Cielo Drive house. They changed the address.
And the Perone house that was featured on The Conjuring as well. But so I guess, okay, if it was just your mundane, I don't know that person's death, then there's no profit in it. But so it works both ways. If you have a high caliber person getting murdered, it becomes more of a value because you can sell it like the Lizzie Borden to make money off people who are thrill seekers.
You sure can. But it's funny, so the house Michael Jackson was in, the mansion, I heard it was either $28 million or $23 million. You read different reports. But either way, it was up there. And it was for sale when he was just renting that place. And I guess he died in 08 or 09 or something like that. It took them till 2011 to sell it, and they sold it at $18 million. Okay, so that's you would think, wow, some super fan would buy that, but that's a lot of money even for a super fan to invest in.
Absolutely.
so that place is depreciated, and then you can go international with this. Go over there to UK, and there's Amy Winehouse where she bought her place, and she was in it for 4 months, and she drank herself to death, what have you. And that place sold a year later for $1 million less.
She was drugged out because she refused to go to rehab.
Right. Yeah, that's right. She made a living off of that statement.
Well, also, and then you have in Transylvania.
I was just thinking about
Vlad the
Tempest.
Impaler, Vlad Tempest, his castle. You got to understand, this guy was basically eating around impaled bodies. And
I was reading a couple years ago that his property was, because it's still for sale, I believe, that it was $900 and some million about 5 years ago, and now it's gone down to, I believe, $100 and some million. And I was like, wow, if I had that money.
Well, that's because who wants to live in Transylvania, first of all.
So I tell people, okay, so you got the paranormal view on it, you got the stigma side of it, and then you have the value side of it. And this could impact your value, just much like that lady. She bought her property for comp $600,000, and then finds out afterwards there's a murder-suicide. And now, I think in time, if she was unethical, she might get away with it and can pass that along to somebody else. Or she can be, it's all in the news now, so I don't know, it'd probably be a little bit harder, but I'm sure she could.
Yeah.
Or she can be a person with integrity and say, hey, look, this house has this murder-suicide attached to it.
And I'm willing to take a loss. Just get it off my hands.
Right. But, when she went to court, she brought appraisers in, and all of the appraisers stated that a death in the home, especially a violent one, can depreciate the home. And I think in their court case, it was talking about like the 15% or something like that.
That's terrible.
But there's a guy named Randall Bell. He's an appraiser, and he's famous in the appraising community, and he's called in for all the big jobs in America, 9/11, and Katrina, and even O.J. Simpson and all those places. He's been making a living at this for about 20 years or so. But he states death in the home can depreciate the property up to 25% and it will take up to 50% longer to sell.
That's a devastating impact.
Well, yeah, it's huge. You hit people in a pocketbook. And then, so I tell people, okay, so you move into this home, you didn't do your research, and you find out there's a murder-suicide. So now your state starts following California, Alaska, South Dakota, what have you, and now the law is you have to disclose. So you're going to be kind of stuck. You're going to have to disclose now, and it's going to be a little tougher for you to sell. So do your research, and that's why the site was created. It's because I didn't find you couldn't go to one place, and it's so time-consuming, and I needed to figure a way to provide people some information quickly. So we know that we can't find all the deaths in homes. It has never been documented standardly across the U.S. where someone's died. I mean, I look at death certificates, I look at all kinds of stuff, and not one death certificate is standard in each state or the towns, and not all the corners fill them out, completely. You got, if you look at your paper and read the news articles, it might say, on Elm Street a man died, or John Smith was murdered on Elm Street. It never gives you the whole story, so you can't just search your address to find these things. So anyways, we know we can't find all the deaths in homes, so what we do is, what we did, we mapped out this whole process manually, right? We designed it. And then my partner, Ronnie, he coded it in, the logic. And then at every place that we need data, because how we piece this whole story together, you need, this piece, just like a journalist will go out and pull together a story. They go talk to this guy and this guy and this guy and this guy, and they cross-reference the story, and then finally, before you know, there's this whole story built. Well, it's the same with this. So at each data point that we figured, okay, we need that, we said, who specializes in this data and who specializes in this data? And once we identified that, we partnered up with each of these guys, and then we have redundant suppliers here. So now and my intent was to provide something free, and but when I started finding out the data we needed and talking to all these people, they're not willing to give the data free, so they charge us. And so when you run an address, it runs through this algorithm, and it's actually touching all these people. And each of these people are charging my account. So that's where it all comes out automatically in the end. And then I have to cover server costs, and I have to cover, overhead. And I try to make a few dollars off it. It is a business, but it's only $11.99. And if you compare it to other reports online that you're used to, all those are in the $39.99 range. The second thing that we're trying to provide you as much information as possible before you buy a home, but we can't guarantee that we're going to find a death in the home. So we also provide you everybody we can find in public records that is associated to that property. And then out of that list, we try to identify which of those people are deceased. So now you have a report. Okay, let's say we didn't find a death in the home, but now you have a report that says, okay, but 3 people have been associated with this property, and they're deceased. Now we just expedited your research. You can start with those deceased. Walk that around, talk to your neighbors if you're comfortable. If not, get online and start searching these people. If not, go down to your town library. And then what we do is, once we see that address that you ran, it comes up in a queue on our end, and we say, okay, so let's do some research for them. But it's only going to be online again, because I can't afford to drive, to Las Vegas and go to your library and check all the records there, because everything didn't start getting digitized until, the 90s. So there's no way I'm going to find, unless it's an obvious big famous home or something, I'm not going to find a lot of the records online, because they're not digitized. So, but we try to do our best on our end and do some manual research for you. But because we keep getting data all month long, every day, new data, and we always are trying to improve the algorithm, we take that address in 30 days and rerun it through the system again for you. So for $12, I think it's a lot that we're trying to get to you. But also, if it's too much, really our marketing says, ask your agent, your seller, your landlord for this report. But if you're not comfortable asking them, you can discreetly purchase it yourself, and we make it as cheap as possible.
Well, that's not a lot by all means, because you just disclose on how you acquire the information for somebody to go out there and do it. I mean, $12, come on. It would cost more to look for records, to pay to get records and stuff like that. That's a good deal. And you know what? You could do it at the privacy of your own home, and you don't have to leave your home. That's the good part, because a lot of people feel uncomfortable to go searching for, any deaths. A lot of people are still old school where they think it's taboo. Roy, we're going to take a quick break. When we return, we're going to talk more with you about your website, diedinhouse.com. We return right here on the Talk of Las Vegas, KLAV 1230 AM.
You're listening to the Paranormal and Beyond. Join us at 731-1230. That's 731-1230. Lindsay and Michael return after this. Join us every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 11 p.m. to midnight for the Paranormal and Beyond. Join host Michael Knight and Lindsay Knight as they investigate the unexplained and most controversial mysteries of the world. The Paranormal and Beyond, where the paranormal lives on and conspiracies exposed. The Paranormal and Beyond, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 11 p.m. to midnight. Brought to you by Knight's Paranormal Research Society.com. Your ticket to the unknown is at Knight's Paranormal Research Society.com. UFOs, ghosts, aliens, hauntings, mysterious places, and more can be found at Knight's Paranormal Research Society.com. Knights with a K, Paranormal Research Society.com. Based out of Las Vegas, Nevada, Knights Paranormal Research Society is owned and operated by the renowned brother and sister team of Michael and Lindsay Knight. Seeing is believing. And at Knight's Paranormal Research Society.com, you're going to believe.
It's too late to worry about that now. Hi, everybody. It's me, Joe DiMessina, for RAD. Recording artists, actors, and athletes against drunk driving. I'm here to remind you, if you celebrate, then designate.
A public service message brought to you by the U.S. Department of Transportation, RAD, the National Association of Broadcasters, and the Ad Council.
Stay somewhere around 3 o'clock. No telling what they're talking about or what's going round. It's too late to worry about.
At 731-1230. Here again, Lindsay and Michael.
All right, if you're just tuning into the program, we are talking with Roy Condrey, founder of the website diedinhouse.com. Remember, check us out at Knight's Paranormal Research Society.com, and you can catch this show as I archive it later on tonight. So a lot of people are interested on this topic.
So, Roy, I have a couple questions to ask you because this is really fascinating, for me, like the information. So let's just say somebody's bidding on a house and they love that house and they want that house so bad, but they're afraid somebody else is going to bid a higher price, but they want to know if, per se, did somebody die in that house? So they go to your website. What is the process? Is it different for everybody?
Well, the process it's a single search process. Some people think it's a subscription. We can't afford to do a subscription because, like I said, the data cost us, and I'm sure this site is so intriguing that if I just opened it up as a subscription, people would run hundreds of reports, and I would just be upside down. But it's a one-time deal. You're basically buying search credits when you get on there. You plug your address in, and then it takes you to the next screen. You need to register, and then they'll say, do you want to proceed? You go to the next screen. You'll choose your product, whether it be a single search, 3 search, 5 search, 10 search, whatever. It keeps going up. But the more you get, the cheaper I can make it for you. And then once you choose your product, you go to the next screen with your credit card information, And then, there's terms of agreement, much like anything else out there. And then finally, the last screen is you're going to see your address again. We try to validate it through Google Maps. We show you a map, so you put eyes on it and say that's the home. If Google doesn't recognize it, it's going to provide you another suggestion. Do you mean this address? And then you proceed. If the report comes back with nothing, you have an empty report because addresses change and all those things, and we validate that, we're going to give you your search credit back or give you a refund. So
awesome.
That's great.
But if it runs, it's a one-time deal, and it's not a subscription, like I said. So we don't keep your credit card information. The only thing we keep on hand is your email, and the reason we do that is so that we can resend you the follow-up report in 30 days. And if you want us to cancel your account at any time, just email us, and we'll just cancel right away as soon as possible. We're trying our best. We started the site, I guess, about 5 months ago, almost 6 months, and we did not see this coming, this publicity coming. What we track is, we don't track page views. We track unique IPs. So every computer device has its own address, like a house. And so you come to us on whatever device you have, and we see it, and we count it as one. So you can come to us 10 times, we're only going to count you as one. We're never going to recount you again. We had 61,000 unique IPs as of the 18th of October. We had a Houston Chronicle article written about us, and that just started the press just started snowballing. And since then, so almost 2 weeks, we have over 600,000.
That's
unique
amazing.
Well, that's because it's totally out the box and different, and that's how you become successful, is when you run the other way and not follow everybody. Okay, what is the return upon submitting an address? How long?
Right, so instant. So you run that report, and instantly you'll get a report back, and in it will say, did we find a death in the home? If yes, here's the information. All right, next section. Here's everyone we can find in public records that's associated with this property. That's another thing I want to explain to people is they could be residents, they could be family members, such as my mother-in-law's on mine, but we're trying to give you everything we can about this address related to a death. Okay, we don't know. These people are somehow associated. They fill out a form or something, or someone fills a form out for them. And then out of that list, we say, here are the people out of that list that are reported as deceased by the U.S. government. And then the third section is, here's all the people that are associated to this property that have not been reported as deceased. And what's funny is we used to say alive. We used to say, here's the people that are deceased, and then the third section, here are the people that are alive, right? Because the opposite of alive, deceased is alive. But I had some customers call and say, hey, my husband's passed away a few years ago, and he's in the alive section. So we went back to the government and asked them, why are you giving us records? And they can't even guarantee all the data. They said, just because someone says they're alive in the death master file does not mean that they're alive. It just hasn't been reported to them. So that's why if you look at our disclaimer, it looks like we're just a site that's just full of it, but it says we can't guarantee anything. We're also not telling you your house has ghosts in it. You're just trying to protect yourself as much as possible. But we're a legitimate site. We feel like this is important information, and we understand we can't get you all of it. We're trying to get it to you as much as we can before you make this large investment. It'll throw a red flag up. It was funny. I was on the radio the other day, and this is to prove it works. And there's two newscasters and the producer. And the producer found out that someone's died in their home. It's right there. So it's some people just don't know. She said she was fine with it, but so anyway, so the report is instant. You get all that information, and then on behind the scenes, we're going to do some research for you, and then we're going to rerun that address through our algorithm, and hopefully get you as much information as possible. If there's a death at home, hopefully we give that to you, or at least show you that person did die, and then you can further on your research.
Your website is so versatile, and I was just thinking, Hey, you know what? It can also be used in, and when let's just talk about auctions. Can you imagine two realtors, in competition to sell homes, and the other one goes, you know what? I'm going to mess up his deal and go on diedinhouse.com, see if somebody died there, and hit up his clients and say, guess what? Somebody died in that house.
Yeah.
Everybody's
Yeah.
they're like,
But do you get, you've gotten so many hits, in the past 5 months, obviously. So let me ask you, do you get a lot of people from the paranormal community who are looking to purchase possibly a home that is haunted? Do you get a lot of feedback from that as well?
I do. I am contacted by the paranormal, and they, I haven't had anybody really, they all seem positive. I don't know if they're just being nice or what have you. The price is an issue sometimes because they're used to looking in the libraries and stuff. But for some of them, it's not an issue. But the paranormal does come back. I think the thing is, they're usually researching these older properties, the 150-year-old homes and stuff, and I can't get that information right now at this point. Our vision is this. It starts with us. And this hasn't been done before. And, Carfax started in '84, what have you. They went out the gate with 10,000 records. And look at them today. We're out the gate with millions of records. So imagine in that time frame how much more advanced we're going to be. So I just think, and we manually plug records in also. So we do have records that go back to the 1800s or what have you. But I don't like to really sell that because it's slim. That's about 10,000 of manual records in there right now.
Right.
oh yeah, a lot of records will
But
get
that
lost.
just goes to show you how many people really are concerned about where they're moving into, you know?
For one, you got a good business. You know why? Because everybody dies. And you'll never run out of search criterias.
It's amazing how many deaths in homes there are. And it's funny is a lot of people, so the other night, this my website was covered on Fox's Red Eye, a late show they have, and Kennedy from MTV is on this board, and some other gentlemen. And the host was raving about the site, and Kennedy liked it. Then they had, there's always an opposing view. And this guy was saying, well, Kennedy, what does it matter? And she goes, I care. I care. And he goes, what is it, haunted? Trying to downplay all that. And she goes, I believe in ghosts. I believe in paranormal. And then he goes, people have died in homes for hundreds of years. And she goes, that's why I don't live in Pioneer Village with Jim or whatever your name is. So it's funny how people like to downplay and push their views on you. Times are changing though. So.
Well, like I said, it's a real great website, and it's going to open a lot of doors. Because, like I said, when it comes to death and stuff like that, it's very taboo, and a lot of people don't want to talk about it because it's just so morbid. It's not like talking about going to Disneyland, but it is a part of life, and that's what we can't escape. That death is a part of life.
What about, besides residential homes, what about commercial buildings? Do you?
Yeah, it will run any address. Again, if the records don't come back, then we're going to give you a refund on it. But it's mainly, I would say, residential property. So there are some commercial buildings that were, like his attorney's offices, whatever they used to be, this old home or whatever. It's going to provide you something. So I ran a report. There was a team in Chicago, and they wanted me to run it on their studio. And I was like, I don't know if it's going to come back with anything. We really didn't test this for commercial. And it came back with a bunch of records, and then it showed one guy was deceased. We couldn't say he died in that at the studio, but at least one of these guys were associated, and he was deceased. And I found that pretty interesting.
Does it say how they died, or is it just that somebody's deceased in that home?
Right. The how they died part on the report right now would be an additional information side, and I haven't seen a lot of that being picked up. That's really, you'd get more of that back after the 30-day recheck, because it's probably a manual entry. This thing, it's smart, and it goes out and puts it all together, but it's not, it can't always find all the additional information. That might be something left on you. We do that for you once we get the address, we try to find out additional information for you for your 30-day report. But there are records that are already plugged in, those manual records. So if you hit one of those, it's already going to have all that information in there for you, so you get that instantly.
You know, Roy, prior to hearing the story from your tenant about haunting, were you a believer in the paranormal? Had to ask you that.
Yeah, you know, I'm not a paranormal expert or anything like that, but I have had experiences, and I like to tell people I can't confirm or deny it. I sound like a politician on this topic. But since I've been doing this business, and the more I'm into it, and the more I do research, and the more stories I hear, you know, and I watch all the shows and everything, I'm very interested. I'd love to be on one of those shows and witness it firsthand, or go with somebody and go on, research just to see it firsthand. But when I was younger and in college, I had this girlfriend, and the story with them was her mother and father were getting separated, and she was about 10 or so, and her mother took her to live with the grandfather. And during this time, their father died suddenly. I think it was a heart attack or what have you. Well, the mother and my girlfriend moved back into that home, and they stayed in it. And then the mother got remarried in time. I met my girlfriend about, 12, 14 years later, so we're in our 20s. The mother and stepfather go on a cruise and ask us to watch the house. We watched the house. So I'm in the house that the guy, her father, lived in, right? Mm-hmm. And it died suddenly. And same furniture and everything. I woke up like 2 in the morning, and I was wide awake. And I swear to you, saying this nationally here, the bed shook for a good second or two. I was wide awake. This was totally obvious. And I just sat there, and I looked over at her. She's still sleeping, and I was like, "Will I wake her?" So I finally woke her up, and I said, "Did you feel that?" And she didn't say anything. She just shook her head, and I said, "The bed shook." And she smiled and went back to sleep. So that freaked me out. I just laid there in the bed until the sun came up. But I was talking. I don't know what to do. I started doing ESP to this guy, saying, "Hey, man, I'm here to hurt your daughter." I was covering up my face.
I've heard a lot of stories like that. Roy, we are coming up to the end. Can you please give us your website and any social media outlets where people can reach you at?
Yeah, absolutely. It's diedinhouse.com, and from there you can go to our Facebook and our Twitter account. And on the Facebook, we have a gallery that I try to post daily, but I haven't been able to since all this media. But it's of a bunch of houses. I try to find very interesting, bizarre stories or stories related to celebrities, people that died in the house.
Well, thank you for being a guest on our program, and I urge everybody out there to find out if somebody died in your house by logging on to diedinhouse.com. Once again, thank you, Roy, for joining us on the program.
Thank you, Michael and Lindsay. You guys have a great show.
No, thank you.
All right, join us back here Wednesday as Leonard Ulrich will finish off the month talking about part 2 of the New World Order, Illuminati, secret societies and biblical prophecy, and kicking off November the 1st, which is Friday, is Stanton Friedman as we get into Roswell and talk about the government cover-up on that. And November 4th, you got to tune in for this show because we have Uri Geller on the show. We're going to talk about bending the mind, not the spoons. We're going to talk about bending your mind with this great guy. So remember, the 30th, Leonard Ulrich, the 1st, Stan Friedman, and the 4th, Uri Geller, and more to come when you tune right back in here into the Paranormal Beyond. Everybody stay safe out there and enjoy your Thursday. Goodbye.
This is the Paranormal and Beyond, and it's your show. Call us at 731-1230. Here again, Michael Knight and Lindsay Knight.
Welcome back to another brand new edition of the Paranormal and Beyond. But first, Be sure to check us out at knightsparanormalresearchsociety.com, where you can link up to all the past shows by simply clicking on that archive link above. That's knightsparanormalresearchsociety.com. Ever want to be an actor? Well, start acting by logging on to hollywoodboundactingacademy.com. Again, that's hollywoodboundactingacademy.com. Special shout out to all those driving around in the Vegas Valley and all those listening to us through the KLAV1230AM.com website. Thank you very much for listening to us and all our stories. I'm your host, Michael Knight. Alongside of me is your other host, Lindsay Knight, the Princess of Darkness of the airwaves. How you doing, Lindsay?
I am.
ResearchSociety.com, based out of Las Vegas, Nevada. Knight's Paranormal Research Society is owned and operated by the renowned brother and sister team of Michael and Lindsay Knight. Seeing is believing. And at Knight's Paranormal Research Society.com, you're going to believe. Join us every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 11 p.m. to midnight, for the Paranormal and Beyond. Join host Michael Knight and Lindsay Knight as they investigate the unexplained and most controversial mysteries of the world. The Paranormal and Beyond, where the paranormal lives on and conspiracies exposed. The Paranormal and Beyond, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 11 p.m. to midnight. Brought to you by Knight's Paranormal Research Society.com.
Paranormal and Beyond. Have you ever came home from work one day to relax when out of nowhere that morbid question of who might have died in your house runs across your mind? Amongst the murders, suicide, and accidents alone, it is said that 65% of the homes in America today have some kind of death-related history etched within its walls. In a moment, Roy Condrey, founder of the controversial website which is now gaining popular notoriety all across the world, diedinhouse.com, will be joining us on the program to discuss his company, which searches millions of records to determine if a death has occurred in a home. Straight ahead, Roy Condrey and diedinhouse.com when we return right here on the Talk of Las Vegas, KLAV 1230 AM.
Your ticket to the unknown is at Knight's Paranormal Research Society.com. UFOs, ghosts, aliens, hauntings, mysterious places, and more can be found at Knight's Paranormal Research Society.com. Knights with a K, Paranormal.
Doing well as always. How are you, Michael?
I am great. A lot of wind out there today, and I'm surprised I did not fly away and end up in Oz. But other than that, I am great. I'm ready to do the show. Coming up pretty soon, we have Roy Condrey, who's going to be talking about his website, deadinhouse.com. We did a piece on this, and it's great to have him on the program. But you know what time it is? It's time to get into the news.
Topping the news for the Paranormal and Beyond, I am your host, Lindsay Knight, giving you all the strange happenings and going on and bizarre things going on around the world. The Museum of Icelandic Society and Witchcraft in Iceland is getting a whole lot of attention lately. Hanging on the wall is a pair of replica pants made from human skin, which is so grotesque they could make even Hannibal Lecter reach for the barf bag. The 17th century human trousers called necro pants were made by skinning the legs of a dead man from the waist down and include all the bits and pieces in between, yes, even the genitals. Worn by the 17th century sorcerers who believed the bizarre slacks possessed magical powers and would bring them wealth and luck by placing a coin in the scrotum of the human khakis. The wearer would have an endless flow of money.
Poltergeists are usually associated with an individual. Hauntings seem to be connected with an area. A house, usually.
Poltergeist disturbances are fairly short duration, perhaps a couple of months. Hauntings can go on for years.
Broadcasting live from the dark and cold dungeons deep beneath the KLAV studios in Las Vegas, Nevada. Prepare yourselves to be taken away into another dimension as we now have control over your thoughts, fears, and perspective of the unexplained world you dare not speak of. With your hosts, Lindsay Knight and Michael Knight. Ladies and gentlemen, we now open the gates to the paranormal and beyond.
Broadcasting live from the KLAV studios in Las Vegas, Nevada, this is the